Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with Charity Financials, sponsored by Ashlinwood. My name is Suzanne Watts and I'm the Senior Conference Producer at Charity Financials. Before I introduce our three speakers today, I would like to go through some housekeeping notes regarding today's webinar. So just before we get started today, please be aware that we are recording the full webinar and will make it available to you afterwards as a download to everyone that registered. The chat area can be found at the bottom of your screen. Please could you click on the chat icon at the bottom of your screen and add your questions there throughout the session. Now we'll have the three speakers present one after each other. So if you have any questions for any of the speakers, please add them there and I will monitor them throughout the session and put them to the speakers at the end of their presentations. If you're having any audio issues through your computer speaker, a headset can fix the problem. And if it still isn't working, please try listening through your phone. You will have received a telephone number to call with your registration email. And throughout the session, there will be interactive polls. Please do join in with the polls during today's webinar. They will allow you to interact and you'll be able to see the live results from the other participants. So I would like to introduce our three speakers today. We have Ashish Patani, Director of Ashlinwood, Paresh Shah, the Director of City Financial Consultants Limited, and also Heather Benjamin, the Chair of Air Ambulance UK. So without further ado, over to you, Ashish.
Thanks, Susanna. I'm just going to share my slides on screen. All right, thank you so much, and welcome everyone. So my name is Ashish Patani. I am a director at Ashlinwood, a small registered accountancy practice and business consultant. So my background is mainly in financial services audit from PwC, and then I moved on to Citigroup, where I looked after fund services and then set up Ashlinwood. And what we do is we help with clients from banking and financial service sector, not-for-profit sector, and the media sector. And so today we just wanted to share a few of the queries and issues that we've come across from some of our not-for-profit sector clients. So essentially the charity sector is clearly facing a lot of difficulties in light of coronavirus. And in fact, the Chartered Institute of Fundraising has actually estimated that around £12.4 billion shortfall in income for charities due to the impact of coronavirus. And clearly navigating through these exceptional times will require strong governance from charities and also a clear tone from the top as to how to navigate through these difficulties. There's a lot of published guidance available as well as the government rolling out an array of support schemes to help charities through these difficult times. So in a sense, we're in this all together, and it's about how do we rise to the challenge. So what we wanted to do was ask an initial question to everyone on our poll. What is the most pressing issue your charity is currently facing? I think it should be coming up on screen now. So we've got a few options: managing cash flow, assessing financial and fundraising, supporting staff and volunteers, IT infrastructure, planning continuity for the charity, or others. So maybe just select, a few of them may apply, but maybe select the most pressing issue that you face. All right, thank you everyone. And I think we've got the sharing the results now with everyone. And what we can say is access to finance, fundraising, operational continuity, kind of the key ones which everybody's facing, which is not surprising. A lot of studies have come out over the last couple of months, which kind of indicates that. So it's kind of in line with what we were expecting. So what we want to do is thank you for the results. We'll go on to the next slide. So we just wanted to really highlight to you the Charity Governance Code. The 7 principles of good governance actually give an excellent framework as to how charities can adhere and sort of deal with the new normal. We're not planning to go into these 7 principles in any depth today, but we just wanted to highlight the first one, organizational purpose. Now, obviously during the coronavirus outbreak, many people naturally want to help in any way possible. However, there may be some restrictions on what a charity can and cannot do with its charitable funds. Therefore, it's important to actually know and understand what the restrictions may be. Now, for example, an arts charity may not simply be able to use its funds to help deliver meals to the elderly during lockdown. Now, this may sound really harsh, but it's important to actually understand what the charity's remit is. Of course, a charity can look at updating its remit or changing it. However, it's important for charity trustees and executives to know and understand what the long-term repercussions of changing the charitable remit would be. It's going to be a long process in itself, potentially requiring members' approval if you're a membership charity, and/or approval from the Charities Commission. And furthermore, a short-term knee-jerk reaction to changing the charitable objectives could actually have a long-term impact to the charity in terms of what its activities are, where the future funding for such a charity comes from, and the impact on its beneficiaries. Therefore, there are many other sort of options potentially available for small charities looking to merge with another similar charity and/or partnering up with a commercial entity could also help deliver some of the services which the charity wants to do, but still retain its core services as per its governing document. Of course, in all of this, communication is going to be vital. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of focus on NHS and health-based charities, and this may actually overshadow other charities in terms of fundraising. For example, arts and cultural charities may be particularly hard hit because of COVID. So it's important for charities to ensure that there's regular communication with its supporters and all the stakeholders, because they'll want to know what is the charity doing in terms of dealing with the new normal, how is the charity ensuring that it remains a going concern, what kind of services can be expected of the charity going forward. So therefore, this is likely to require greater frequency of communication between the charity and its stakeholders, and monthly newsletter may simply not be adequate anymore. And there's also a greater focus to use social media to get the messaging across. Now this is kind of a really important area for especially small charities, where a lot of research has found that there is a skills shortage in terms of charities and the use of social media. And of course, nowadays, because everybody's online, it's a very crowded online environment. And therefore, for small charities, it's very particularly important to have an effective strategy around social media. Of course, developing a clear policy and procedures will help and make it more effective. So the key is making sure that your charity is adapting to the situation at hand. Now, the ability of leadership to adapt to this change and react to evolving situation is primary importance. Having a strong team of trustees and executives will help because they can bounce ideas off each other in a positive manner to work out what are the next steps for the charity. Now, many charities will have probably seen some of their regular services come to an abrupt halt because of the lockdown imposed. We had an example of a community language school which ran classes on the weekend, and literally those classes came to a stop overnight. And now converting that school into an online language school required a lot of detailed planning, training, and testing the IT systems as well. Obviously, training needed to be provided both to the teachers as well as the students, and the necessary IT equipment had to be put in place. But what it also threw up was a number of GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation questions and considerations, because obviously the online services now included new data controllers and new data processes which needed to be factored into the whole online process. Of course, one of the other bigger headaches charities could be facing is how to deal with trustees which may have come to the end of their term, or to hold annual general meetings during the lockdown, where there's obviously restrictions on large gatherings. Now, there's a lot of published guidance on this matter, so we're not going to really dwell on it today, but if anybody's got questions, we can obviously take it at the end. There are some temporary amendments which have been brought in by the Corporate Insolvency and Governance Act 2020, which allows a greater degree of flexibility and options for charitable incorporated organizations, as well as charitable companies, till the end of September. And maybe these extensions could go beyond that, depending on the situation with coronavirus. Importantly, it's good to note that unincorporated charities are not factored into the new law. So it does really leave it down to the trustees in determining what is best for the charity. And in fact, the Charity Commission, through its published guidance, has taken a very much of a pragmatic approach to this and emphasized it's down to the charity trustees to fully understand the situation and act in the best interest of the charity, and obviously clearly document any decisions that they make to demonstrate good governance. Now, trustee meetings themselves may need to be held virtually. And what this could mean is that trustee meetings would now maybe potentially have somebody from the IT side, being an IT facilitator on the providing technical support. Now, this could potentially mean that somebody who doesn't normally attend a trustee meeting starts attending, and obviously there might be need for some confidentiality to remain GDPR compliant on some matters. So overall, naturally, charities are going to face with looking at their operational activities, policies, and procedures, and looking to see how they can adopt a much more of an online service and incorporate that within their general operations. Now, this doesn't simply mean that it's a paper exercise to update policy documents, but actually it provides a good sort of opportunity for charities to slightly rethink what they've been doing and how they've been doing it, and maybe becoming a bit more agile in terms of how they operate going forward. So often with smaller charities, there's little or no consideration given to business continuity planning in any formal sense in normal times, and now in COVID world, it's really vital. So knowing what the short, medium, and long-term priorities are, and sort of factoring the financial planning around these priorities is absolutely essential. Of course, charities need to consider what kind of services they may be able to stop or defer or delay so that they can focus on just the core services to see them through these difficult times. Of course, looking at reserves would be an important factor in the financial management. And obviously, there will be two types of reserves, restricted and unrestricted. And there are some grounds on which restricted funds can be used, but obviously this needs to be carefully considered before looking into tapping into restricted funds. There's also an array of government support available to charities, which has been rolled out over the last couple of months. So you've got the Corona Business Interpretation Loan, you've got the gift aid on cancelled events, you also have the VAT sort of deferments of payments. So there's a number of options which charities could use to manage their cash flows better in the next sort of few months coming. So what we want to really stress on is financial management is at the heart of dealing with the COVID-19 outbreak for charitable purpose to make sure that they remain as a going concern. Something like 75% of charities are micro entities, which means that their annual income is £100,000 or less. And unfortunately, some of these charities will struggle to continue given the financial difficulties. So looking at cash flow management is an important consideration in sort of future planning for charities. And I think Paresh is going to touch a little bit more in terms of how charities can use its existing funds on hand to better work for getting greater returns so that the charity can have a little bit of extra funding available to play with over the next few months to see through these difficult times. Of course, looking at having a policy around restricted and unrestricted funds is absolutely key, and maybe some of that might need to be revised. And also fundraising plans may need to be updated to incorporate a bit more online activities and tapping into the online market in terms of generating some fundraising projects. Looking at long-term forecasting for a charity is obviously going to be a necessary evil for everyone. And of course, this will all mean that there's going to be some accounting as well as audit considerations for charities in terms of going concern in particular, but also looking at what their financial outlook looks like. So consider how your charity is sort of adapting to the new realities that we're all facing. Has your charity done a business continuity plan? Has it revised its cash flow forecast? Has it updated the kind of services it's going to carry on with? Has it put on hold some services which it may have done previously? And importantly, who's on the team with the charity to help them see through these difficult times? And I think the last point is really the key that we want to stress. Ultimately, it's all about people. Looking after the welfare of all charity stakeholders is important to ensure that the charity remains a going concern. Look at the team of trustees or the executive staff, volunteers, donors that you have on hand with you. And maybe there might be consideration need to be given whether additional staff or volunteers may need to be brought in, especially those ones with a bit more digital and online experience, those with a bit more financial planning experience, those with a bit more strategic and business-minded thinking to help your charity rise to the challenge of COVID-19. And the final point I just want to stress is that looking at it from a point of view of not simply dealing with the new norm, but how is your charity going to actually thrive in a sustainable way in the new norm is an important consideration. So on that note, I think I just want to launch a second poll that we have. How is your charity dealing with the new norm? Again, there's a few options there for you to consider. Reducing services, developing online services, seeking government support, seeking professional advice, considering merging with another charity, or any other options you may have considered. If you select the other option, then please do put a comment in the chat function with some of the ways you think you'll be embarking to deal with the new norm. Thank you. And we've got the results. Not surprisingly, 83% wanted to develop online services and activities. And this is pretty much very much in line with the recent surveys which have been done by the Skills Council. And there's a report actually published not just in the last few days, actually, and which had similar parallels that over 80 to 90% of charities said essentially they lacked the in-house ability to do online events, but this is something that they were actively looking to develop. And then also reducing services as well as seeking government support would be the other sort of key areas that the charities would be looking to deal. So again, this is very much in line with some of the studies which have come out, and I'm sure we can discuss a little bit more during the Q&A section of this webinar today. So thank you everyone for listening to my presentation, and we will be taking some questions at the end, but I think I want to hand back over to Paresh Shah to take us through some of the financial cash flow considerations.
Thanks, Ashish. Thanks for your invite as well. My name is Paresh Shah of City Financial Consultants. I'm part of a company, larger company called St. James Place Wealth Management. St. James Place Wealth Management is a FTSE 100 listed company with over £100 billion worth of clients' funds under management. I've been helping SMEs, charities, and individuals manage their finances for over 30 years. I know I don't look that old, but it has been 30 years. So really, we're all kind of always busy looking after other things, but money doesn't seem to be a priority, and that goes for everyone: charities, businesses, individuals. So holding cash in this climate is ever important than before. But holding cash in a bank account may not be the ideal answer. So, what are the problems facing when we're looking at dealing with cash held by charities? Problems are, at the moment, we know near enough zero interest rates. To get any kind of return on cash sitting in a bank account is near on impossible for various reasons. One, how do we find out who is offering the best rates on the market? It's quite difficult. You can find out from money savings expert what you can get for your money, but how can charity access any of that information? It's very difficult. If you find it, you found a bank that will give you a good rate of interest, you've got the added burden of opening the accounts, going through the rigmarole of how you can look at these. once you've opened the account, you're adding another layer of administration of moving money from bank A to bank B. Also, holding money in one bank increases the risk for individuals, charities. As you may be aware, the Financial Services Compensation Scheme only covers you up to £85,000 per bank. So anything more than for 85,000, your money is potentially at risk. To give you an example, if you've got £400,000 sitting in a bank account, only 85,000 is covered. Anything over and above that is potentially at risk if the bank runs into any problems. So we know we need to hold cash, especially charities. We have projects going on. Fundings are not always planned funding. There could be ad hoc, especially in these times. We may need the money for projects that have come up. So what we've done is we've partnered with a number of providers, over 20 providers, all with the UK banking license, to park your money for a period of time, instant access, whether it's in a year's time, 6 months' time, 12 months' time, so you can stagger your deposits. The benefit of this facility, cash management facility, is to minimize paperwork. One application, and that's all that's needed. Easy access, as we said, 20 banking institutions we've partnered with. They individually have various accounts within them. So it gives you over 400 different options. I'm not sure if charities have need for foreign currency, but that's also possible. Now, going back to my example of 400,000 sitting in the bank account, you open 4 bank accounts using the cash management facility, you've immediately reduced your risk to virtually zero. So you not only have you reduced the risk, but you've also given yourself the increase in income. And charities, obviously, as trustees, we need to look after the money that's been donated or earned in whichever capacity charities raise their money. So you've diversified your risk, you've increased your returns. In addition, we've got within the facility, various banks all have different strengths, financial strengths. Some could be very good, some may not be good, but overall overriding factor is that they all have the Financial Services Compensation Scheme protection of up to £85,000. So you can compare the risks. You may say, I'll put my money with Nationwide Building Society, which has a good rating, but a bank, say ICICI Bank, may have a lower rating, but still you've got the 85,000 protection. So there are many cash facilities out there on the market. Have a look at them. I think it's worth looking at it just to increase the return that you're getting on your money, which is sitting in the bank. And I've known charities which have got money sitting in cash year on year and earning little or no interest. Your bank will offer you some rates, but you're not limited by your bank. And this facility can be used without leaving your office. It's via secure internet portal. You can move money around at a moment's notice. So, and again, this will help you with your cash flow planning as well. If you've got a good cash flow planning facility, you will be able to make the most of your money. So one other thing that it's not on on here, and this is of help to other charities. St. James Place Wealth Management, we have a foundation, SJP Foundation, which raises money to help charities. So it's another facility that is available for people wanting grants for their charities. Over £100 million has been raised so far, and it's helped many charities. Sorry, it wasn't in the slide, but it's something that I had forgotten about and thought I'd just mention it to you. that's enough from me, I think. I'll got a short poll. If you could let us know if you've used this facility, you've heard of it, or any other questions there. And happy to take questions at the end as well. Thank you very much. So I'm going to pass you over to Heather Benjamin of Air Ambulance Services after the results of the poll. I'm not surprised again. Not many have heard of this facility, and quite a few have heard of it, which is quite good. So, yeah, it's. I'm not surprised by the outcome here either. It's not very well publicized out there. So, thank you very much. I'm going to pass you over to Heather Benjamin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for including me in this webinar and your feedback, Ashish and Parish. I'm really proud to be an ambassador for all the wonderful work that the charities are doing in the UK. Their role has been absolutely key in light of the COVID-19, whether it's the air ambulances saving lives, or in my previous organisations, supporting learning disabled people, the orchestra, St Martin's in the Fields, or the volunteer side of it. So it's been a very important part of my life. I've got a couple of slides which I'm going to build on the points raised earlier, but I want to actually bring in the board lens view. Not only what we've been doing during the COVID-19 outbreak, but also where boards are actually focusing for their future and embracing any of the changes that have emerged. And board members have really had to step up to work closely and support their executives during this period of time and balance a number of risks that have evolved. One interesting part of it is doing board meetings online. They've certainly become much shorter, but it also involves a lot of preparation, not of papers, but making sure necessarily that people get their views in early so that we don't have long protracted discussions on one particular item, so that we can actually pace that as the chair of trustees. So, but also we want to protect the executive not sitting and writing lots and lots of papers. They need to be focused on the front line at this moment in time. So there's a balancing act that is actually needed there to have enough information to make some decisions. So the two slides that I've got are covering the sort of areas that are sitting in board agendas at this moment in time. And I think, as she said earlier, the people aspect of it has definitely moved up the agenda on all the board meetings that I've been involved with. And health and safety in particular has been one of the top focuses. Not only people returning, but also people that are working from home, living with their families, trying to find an area that they can actually do some work in. So that health and safety aspect has been important. But the other part of it is the communities that we serve as well. We are very, very sensitive in making sure that we understand what is happening out there, and reaching out to the people that we are actually supporting is a really key part of that. I'm not going to talk a lot about cash flow and liquidity because I think that has been covered in a lot of depth. But to say that probably is another one of the top agendas is really, really key. And trustees having an understanding of finances and sitting and discussing these has certainly raised the agenda of what sort of skills do you need in the boardroom overall. We can't just rely on one or two people. People have to understand the implications of that aspect of it. But we've also then tying in that with the oversight of risk to the particular charity itself. Communications, communications, communications. I think that is probably one of the areas that the trustees have been supporting the executive team on, because we have got multiple stakeholders that need to understand what is going on. That information aspect of it, I think during COVID-19 has raised itself quite considerably. We've had to flex our style, but keep the same messages, but actually, depending on who the stakeholders are, we've had to adapt depending on what is needed and when. I think one of the big things that I've learned throughout this whole process is if you can't give an answer to something, be very transparent and actually say that. And not just say, don't worry, we'll do it next week. Be very honest about when can that information be available, because we're going to have to adapt very quickly. But one thing I've found is being honest and being transparent has actually been very, very key throughout the whole of this process. The other part is fundraising, and I think that got mentioned before. It's key for survival. You know, a lot of people have actually put off their plans until 2021 because key events have been cancelled. And also they're being very, very sensitive that they recognize that people are struggling with their own issues at this moment in time. So actually it's quite interesting, in a couple of charities I have been involved with, the emphasis has been that if they have contacted people, the only discussion they're having is, are you okay? Are you well? Not, can you give us some money? Because that is a really, really important part of it, is the sensitivity to the community that you're actually supporting. So that's been one of the key areas. But at the same time, we have got to put the fundraising pipeline back in, because we can't go year on year without that fundraising happening. And that's where obviously some of the online and digital side has been very, very key for us. But I think that was one of the areas that we've had to be really reconsidering as part of the way forward. But if you try something new, then actually that's quite exciting as well. So, and what we've loved is all the ideas that have come from our own people about different approaches that we can do. So I think that's important. I think the point about working closely with the executive is very key, but one of the discussions I've been taking place with other chairs in large charities is actually sitting and saying, but how do we then start slowly returning to the governance overview? Because, you know, that is one of the key roles of what trustees are there for. We have been in an unusual situation of many meetings, providing lots of support for very overworked executive teams. But at the end of the day, we have got to switch back to what are the reserve matters that the board is looking at, and what is happening from an executive point of view. And another part of that, a point I mentioned later, is the delegated responsibilities. That's where the trust and the empowerment has demonstrated that we can move to another level of the way that we're operating. So that's very exciting. At the same time, a board has to look at scenario planning and horizon scanning, not just for what we're doing at this moment in time, but looking at what was our previous business plans pre-COVID, and what are the parts that we can keep, but also what are the parts that we've got to stop, and where do we radically need to review that. One of the things that I did with air ambulances is that we've split some of the trustees to go away and work on that side of it, whilst others are still dealing with some of the immediate impact of COVID. And then using that opportunity to go out and start talking with the members about how that will be adjusted for the 3-year strategy for going forward. I found that splitting the two groups has been very helpful. So, and the way we work is changing, but what has come through is choice is important. And what is it that people want to do? And particularly the supporting of mental well-being. I think that's been very important for us. One of the things that we did do as part of our changes is we have closed our headquarters offices and moved to home working. But we did a lot of thinking about the implications for that. How do you set up a PO box? How do you make sure that the person's got a safe if any checks are arriving in the post? All of these types of things you wouldn't naturally have on a list as part of the way that you're operating. But what we did is went and talked to another charity that's actually done this, and they actually tipped us off about all of the areas to consider, which was very helpful. If I move to the next slide. The focus on society and customer at the heart of decisions, that's definitely raised the profile. And it's not going to think about the customer at a later point in the decision making, but it's actually at the start of the decision making that has been really important for us. And because society is changing quite considerably with the clapping for heroes and everything else like that, that comes into your organization at the end of the day. And it aligns with the values that are very, very important for you. And then agility being key is very key for us. But picking up on Ashish's point, you can change to digital, you can do a whole number of things, but you actually got to do the step back and think about, what does this mean for my processes? What does this mean for my controls and my systems? Because at the end of the day, the auditor at the end of the year is going to be actually checking, are those controls in place? So it's really important that that part of it is considered. Keep the empowerment and the delegation going. If you've got to change something, then what is key is not to call it a failure. It's a lesson that we've learned. And it's because you've tried something and it didn't work. It doesn't mean it's a failure. You just build on it, and what would you do differently? And I think that is important. Fast decision making has definitely come through, but certainly the importance of data and how that has helped decisions is important, that you actually make decisions, and no decisions is actually 10 times worse for us. So that brings paralysis to an organization. So sometimes you have to take that leap of faith and make those decisions, but actually that is welcomed in an organization that something is actually happening. And then I come to probably one of the most important points that has come through, not only in air ambulances, but amongst a number of charities. I link in with some chairs from the Association of Chairs, and we've been meeting monthly, and someone might be ahead of the curve looking at something, and we've been sharing that information. But also in Air Ambulances UK, the CEOs of all the different charities have been coming together. And once again, if someone is doing something a little bit ahead of the curve, like setting up screening in the helicopters, they've been able to share that in advance so someone doesn't start from scratch. So what has really come through is the collaboration of sharing that information. And it's been a strong lesson for me about how charities really must do this to survive at the end of the day. And that ties in with the sustainable organizations that we were talking about earlier. I'm not going to go through audits and filing accounts. I've been through that process myself as a chair. I was mightily relieved to get through the going concern discussions that we had, going through several layers in the audit practice, but them not being available because that is obviously one of the aspects that they are equally going through COVID-19 themselves. But what I didn't want was qualified accounts, which is going to cause problems for fundraising later, because that is the window at the end of the day. So in summary, I want to make sure that the board lens is focused on embracing all the good things that have come out of COVID-19, like trust and safety, enabling choice, looking at the customer and the community, and the fast decision making. But it's really important that we follow the money and make sure that we mitigate those risks. So that was the insight from a board perspective that I wanted to share today.
Thank you to everybody there. That was Fantastic. I have some questions for you from the viewers, but just before I say that, if you're watching this as a recording, you can still put your questions to the three speakers if you email myself at suzanne.watts@wilmingtonplc.com, or you can email the presenters directly, and I know Ashish and Paresh have put their emails on the system, so we will also forward any emails to the correct speakers. First of all, Ashish, I have a question for you regarding GDPR. How can charities ensure that they are still GDPR compliant when they've been taking their services and operations online over the past few months?
Yeah, thank you for that. Very pertinent question. I think one of the key things is to actually just map out the processes and what's involved in going online in terms of services, especially identifying the people who are going to be involved. Because what you will find is that a new set of people, maybe with the digital skills, they'll need access to information such as registration for online activities and events, and they'll have access to information which previously they wouldn't have. And just making sure that these small steps are actually documented would be a good step to make sure that it remains sort of GDPR and you're not letting data go astray. And so it's quite important from that basic point of view to just sort of map out step by step what's involved, who's involved, and document the process by which the services will be rolled out. Some of these things do take a bit of time to map out, but it's rather get it right first rather than go online and then find that you're suddenly doing things you shouldn't be doing, or these data is going AWOL. So I think one of the key steps I would recommend, the main thing, map out what you're going to do before you do it. Have it reviewed either internally or externally if you need to, and then launch your service.
We have a question for possibly all three of you regarding trustees. How can charities deal with conflict between trustees and board members when they're working with them remotely?
Well, I'm happy to take that, but maybe Heather, from your experience, it might be better if you want to take that.
So one of the important aspects is making sure that we do capture any conflicts of interests. That is really important part of it. All I would say is that you just are constantly talking about any issues that are arising and where might that be a problem for people. Trustees are very quick to say if there are any issues that are going on, and they are very aware of anything that from that perspective. So,
and related to that, a question just came in. Can you recommend any guidance on holding a virtual AGM? This particular charity said they're doing this for the first time this year, and they would appreciate some advice.
Yeah, I mean, some guidance has already been published under the Corporate Insolvency and Governance Act as well. There's also temporary guidelines which are on the Charity Commission's website in terms of holding AGMs. A lot of it is going to be very restricted in terms of its agenda and what you can do, because main focus is going to be if you're a membership organization, to make sure that all members have the opportunity from your charity to take part in this, and that could be a difficulty which the charity needs to consider carefully before thinking about doing an online AGM when we're rolling this out. And again, maybe Heather, from your experience.
Yep. No, we held ours online this year. Being very well prepared, I think, is incredibly important. Making sure that you have questions available so that you are aware of that, but also allowing some space for any members to raise any points, having heard all of the information and the dialogue. It is, you know, an area that is much more scripted probably at the beginning, but I think that space to actually raise any points and any questions in advance means that you get the most out of the period of time. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. And one of our viewers asked, they're looking to attract a finance trustee to their board. At this time when finance professionals are particularly taken up in dealing with all the other challenges of COVID-19, how can they find that person and convince them to free up their time at the moment?
I understand how difficult that is. I am very lucky that a couple of my trustees are financially qualified, but one of them I actually went out for in April, which was right in the heart of the COVID. The key thing is you find someone that's passionate about your charity. And with Air Ambulances UK, you know, there is a lot of people that are passionate from that perspective as well. A lot of people apply, but diversity of thought is really, really important. So spending time during the discussions to understand, do people really understand the finances side? If they're not financially qualified, but at the same time, if you can get someone that is, that's absolutely brilliant.
We have a question regarding bank accounts at the moment. One charity was thinking of changing bank. Are there any particular bank accounts at the present time that are more beneficial to charities? This charity was considering CAF Bank.
So the facility that I was speaking about doesn't require you to change your bank account, so you can stay with your bank, but use the facility. So you don't have to change your relationship with your current bank. It is a conduit to other banks and can remain with your current bank and still have access to an array of interest rates and options.
Okay. And I have a question regarding funds. At the present time, do you think there'll be more competition to apply for funds by charities because of the funding issues caused by COVID-19? Or do you think we'll see greater collaboration between charities and funds?
I think you're likely to see a mixture of both. Because there was a study done by the Institute of Fundraising, and they actually found sort of around 17% of smaller charities had actually applied for the government scheme and help so far. So which kind of seems to suggest that not a lot have actually applied, or they potentially could be in the process of applying. But in terms of competition, certainly, yes. I mean, as kind of you originally highlighted, there's going to be like a £12 billion shortage this time in terms of income. So obviously, a lot of charities will be competing for the same sort of almost donation from individuals. And collaboration is certainly a key, especially for the small to medium-sized charities. A, it will just strengthen the charity's resources available, and B, it will help with the going concern sort of considerations going forward. So certainly looking at to collaborate with other similar charities would be a good step.
And Heather, at Air Ambulance, have you managed to benefit from any of the new government funding schemes that have become available?
Yes, we were successful in getting some of the money, the 750 million that was allocated overall. And we managed to get some of the life-saving charities funding. We got 6 million from that. It takes a huge amount of time and effort, a lot of building up of discussions to explain what your situation is, because there are a lot of people competing for that particular money itself. And a lot of work goes into those particular grants. They're not something that you can complete in a day. And then a lot of follow-on discussions themselves. And also, the commitment doesn't stop there. You have to give a lot of evidence afterwards that you are actually providing the funds for the areas that they have agreed with you. So one of the things you think about before you go for it is, certainly you will be in competition with lots of other people, but you have to allocate a lot of time and effort with respect to that, and the commitment for following that up to provide the information afterwards.
And Heather, you mentioned obviously applying for those funds taking so much time and effort. What new skills are emerging from your board during this time? What skills should they have to cope with the current crisis?
Well, certainly it's not just the board, it's actually working with the members. Because and there was a huge amount of commitment with respect to that, because you can't just do that from the AA UK perspective. It's actually sitting and talking with the members about what are the issues that are actually happening overall. And if we were looking for evidence on a whole number of areas, where would that evidence come from? So actually, it was a huge collaboration in dealing with that. But you can't do it by committee. You have to have some people that are leading that. The trustees themselves, there are a lot of commercial skills that are sitting, who regularly with other organisations are going out seeking grants and commercially applying their experience there as well. So you don't leave it to one or two people. You actually have to involve a lot of people with respect to that. But it is such an important thing that people will prioritise their time for it.
And maybe this is a question for all three of you. We have a question from somebody who has a board made up of 10 trustees, and they've got 2 vacancies coming up. They already have the HR, finance and governance skills represented. But what would be the ideal skill set in those 2 vacancies that they should be looking for?
I think, again, I would stress probably somebody with a digital and media background would be kind of essential at this time.
Yes.
And depending on obviously what the specifics are for the charity and they're looking to do more online, somebody with that sort of skill set would be a good individual to have on the board, certainly at this time.
And we have a question regarding getting the management board to participate in online services and an online AGM. This particular charity is struggling to get everybody to take part in the meeting in the new remote format. How can they ensure that the right number of people participate and have the ability to participate as well?
We spent a lot of time actually talking with the members to ensure that we got the right quorate turning up for the actual meeting. And I think part of what people are thinking is, well, do we not have a meeting then if we're not quorate? And people do want to actually sit and discuss things. So I think this point about preparation and making sure that people feel that it won't just be going through a list of items, but they will have a chance to have an exchange, does mean that people will turn up and be part of that. But being quorate is a very key part of an AGM. So, and just picking up on your skills that we need for the modern board. There's a lot, the interview part of it is looking also at the soft skills part of it. That empathy and do people align with the values of the charity is so key, because this does involve time and effort, and that is important. So as well as all of the list of areas that you're looking for, I think that part about connections with the society that they're supporting, and also that external focus, I think, is really important as well. Because if people are not in touch with what is going on, how can they come and help? Because that is one of the key roles of the Board of Trustees. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all your questions today. I just wanted to say that we will be sending a link of the recorded version of this webinar and all the presentations to everybody who has registered. And as well as the slides, obviously, we'll be sending around from the 3 presenters. I'd like to thank our speakers, Paresh. Oh, we have one more, sorry. There we go. We have an end of presentation poll. So just before we all go away, which of the following fundraising methods has your charity done or is planning to do? Could you all react to that, and then we can see what you're currently doing to bridge the funding gap. We've got buying charity items online, encouraging personal challenges, online events such as quizzes or concerts, online direct appeals on social media, or others. So we'll just give that a few seconds. Which of the following fundraising methods has your charity done or is planning to do? Okay, could we close that now? Thank you. So online and direct appeals and social media, very popular at the moment. And I've heard direct case studies myself that charities have launched direct appeals at the moment, and it's had a very good response during the lockdown period, because whether people have more time to focus, whether people's budgets are slightly different, or they're just feeling more charitable at the present time and more willing to give donations, that may be something. I'll just close that for the moment. Well, I think I will round up there. Thank you, Paresh and Heather, for joining the session today. And of course, thank you, Ashish Patani of Ashland Wood, for presenting and for sponsoring the webinar today. Thank you for Mel and Kelly from Wilmington also for their work in the background today. If you're watching this as a recording, please do send any questions you have for the three speakers, either directly to Ashish at Ashland Wood or to myself at suzanne.watts@wilmingtonplc.com, and I'll make sure they're forwarded to the right person. I hope you found today's webinar useful and that you will join Charity Financial in future for other webinars. Thank you and goodbye.